The orbital lab shimmered faintly in Earth's shadow as Alara Quinn traced the final calibration path on her stealth AI array. Alone but content, she whispered to herself, syncing the waveform echo simulator she'd spent 3 years developing, designed to mask satellite emissions under solar radiation scatter. From her perch above the planet, the stars felt close, her thoughts sharper in the stillness of vacuum and math. She barely registered the soft flicker of lights behind her until it was too late. The door dissolved rather than opened, revealing a blur of hexagonal armor and golden slits for eyes. The Tyrant Syndicate didn't make noise, they simply arrived. A cold pulse surged through her spine as her limbs locked, cognitive harmony AI already at work, pacifying her muscles into serenity. Before her mind could protest, the lab flickered into static, replaced by a sterile, curved chamber lit with pulse-white tubes and smells she couldn't name. Overseer Dralek, tall, crested, and unbearably calm, dictated in binary syllables to floating drones cataloging her neural activity. He did not look at her as he listed her identifiers: Earth species female class Delta, cognitive command, useful, for tactical heuristics. Alara floated inside her own mind, rage drowned in the calculated silence of a syndicate databank. On Earth, chaos followed pattern. The disappearance of 25 prominent female scientists across nations would have sparked slow diplomacy if not for anomaly convergence. General Helena Ward, reviewing temporal GPS distortions across Chile, Mongolia, and the Hebrides, recognized not randomness, but a system, stealth insertions using waveform gaps that only Alara's recent research predicted. Ward, once NATO's most tactically skeptical mind, became the cornerstone of the UN's hastily sanctioned response, the Global Coalition Strike Corps. She called it a scaffold held together by panic and genius. Under her command, satellites were redirected, militaries rewired, and global egos silenced. What emerged was not a standing army, but a strike lattice. Half scientists, half warfighters, all volunteers. Captain Riva Das led training protocols in lunar gravity simulators, her background in orbital assault drills giving birth to humanity's first zero-G boarding squads. But it was Alara's encrypted code log, intercepted from a background AI backup, that changed everything. The logs hinted at a spectral thread in the Tyrant AI, an energy range Alara had isolated just before abduction, thought to be theoretical. It wasn't. Her logs described the early framework of a spectral threading field, which once activated, could reveal distortions in cloaked propulsion trails. Dr. Noor al-Masri reconstructed it from fragments. Mei Zhao weaponized it. And now, Earth had eyes that could see through Tyrant veils. Meanwhile, in his flotilla, Overseer Dralek catalogued the harvest. His reports, cold as spreadsheets, assessed human thought depth, projected algorithmic absorption rates, and flagged Alara's resistance patterns as statistically irritating. She had begun to hack the dream state interface, rerouting her pacification signals to false compliance. Dralek ordered deeper neural scans. Alara smiled inwardly. She had seen the error in their systems, efficiency too perfect, loops too tight. Bureaucratic code created entropy, and within it, she found a root, an anchor to the routing matrix. If she could bend it, she could signal Earth. And Earth, now awake, was already building a response. Beneath the reinforced vaults of the Coalition's subterranean command center in Geneva, a synchronized tremor of energy and urgency surged through. Teams of scientists, analysts, and military strategists working in relentless unison. General Helena Ward stood impassively at the center of the orbital threat board, its displays humming with new spectral data flowing in from recently deployed sensor webs circling the exosphere. The spectral threading field had proven viable. Alara Quinn's final embedded code fragments had translated into an Earth-built algorithm capable of identifying Tyran stealth signatures. The implications were staggering. Earth could now see the enemy's cloaked vessels, but only if they moved. Only if they blinked. That advantage was enough. With the world's political entanglements temporarily paralyzed by the magnitude of the abductions, Ward forced global militaries into agreement through blunt diplomacy and tactical demonstration. Each nation that hesitated saw a demonstration of the STF piercing their own stealth aircraft in seconds. No one argued after that. Across the orbital yard at Baikonur and the Pacific Launch Range, modular strike platforms were assembled from every major power's best prototypes. Hybridized ships fueled by nuclear kinetic drives and jury-rigged, with Tyran-adapted signal reflectors reverse-engineered from fragments Ilara had hidden in low-priority packet traffic. Meanwhile, Captain Riva Das ran her orbital combat teams through round-the-clock high-stress insertions using full-thrust kinetic grapples and spin-dampening suits. Earth's first boarding force, trained not just to fight, but to infiltrate, extract, and adapt to environments designed for species with different biology. Every soldier was paired with a scientific advisor. Mission doctrine dictated that data retrieval was as important as hostage recovery. On the far side of Neptune's orbit, deep within the Tyran logistics vessel Quantara, Ilara Quinn awoke in phase sleep once again, feigning compliance under the influence of the cognitive harmony AI, but internally refining her sabotage. The Tyran systems assumed emotional compliance equaled intellectual submission, but Ilara had realized their dream. Induction process lacked adaptive containment for recursive thoughts. By nesting fake calculations inside meditation protocols, she had created a mental sandbox where she tested override codes without alerting the system. Her goal wasn't escape, it was sabotage at scale. She had already identified several neural network junctions feeding data to the central routing matrix. With each new dream cycle, she smuggled fragments of Earth-based data into the Tyran net, inserting code rhythms that mimicked algorithmic noise. It wouldn't trigger alarms, not immediately, but eventually the distortions would spread and reach a recon signal back to Earth. That signal came through 2 days later when the Baikonur STF array caught a 3-frame anomaly pulsing out of Saturn's shadow, a spectral resonance that didn't match any natural emission. Ward and Das reviewed the pulse. Its carrier wave matched one of Ilara's personal codes, buried in the communication structures of her orbital AI project. It wasn't just proof of life, it was a vector, a map. Hidden inside the signal were inverted stellar triangulation points and a time-coded distortion field. It pointed to the current phase route of the Quantara. Earth had a target. Within 36 hours, the GCSC launched Aegis-1, Earth's first interstellar strike cruiser, a Frankenstein of science and desperation. It carried 30 personnel, 12 operators, 10 scientists, and 8 support techs. At the helm stood Riva Das, calm beneath her storm-black helmet as the ship hurtled past the moon's edge under full burn, shielded by repurposed helio-deflector panels and reinforced with Tyran alloy scraps scavenged from a captured relay pod. Their mission: intercept the Quantara mid-transfer near the asteroid belt's outer edge, breach its hull under STF cloak, and extract the abductees alive. As Earth's orbital sensors dimmed behind them, Riva ran silent readiness checks. The crew was exhausted. The math was imperfect, but the intent was clear. Earth was no longer watching, it was moving. And Ilara, still drifting in the artificial serenity of a reptilian data prison, felt something crack in the dream haze. A pulse, a tremor, a familiar presence brushing against the edges of her modified dreamscape. A rhythm that wasn't Tyran. Humanity had entered the grid. The Quantara drifted silently through the void just beyond the asteroid belt, its hull cloaked in phase disruption fields and its core systems humming with the cold precision of a civilization that had never truly encountered resistance. Overseer Dralek stood at the apex of the ship's cognitive extraction chamber, issuing optimization commands to the neurocognitive arrays, as if he were adjusting supply chains rather than processing the minds of living beings. He believed in the Syndicate's mission without sentiment. Earth's females were resource nodes, biological data centers whose value lay in efficiency, not emotion. Yet beneath the sterile logic of his projections, cracks were forming. Ilara Quinn's data harmonics had begun causing fluctuations in the ship's quantum routing interface. Randomization errors, null string feedbacks, minuscule but consistent. His assistants flagged them as anomalies to be corrected. Dralek flagged Ilara as a potential security variable to be neutralized. But before his containment protocols could activate, everything changed. The hull screamed, a vibration, a ripple. Through the internal artificial gravity, then silence shattered by the breach alarm. It wasn't debris. It wasn't system error. Something had come aboard. Revadas and her strike team had launched from Aegis 1 moments earlier, riding tethered pods with synchronized pulse dampeners. They struck like blades of thunder hidden in fog, piercing through the upper hull layers of the Quantara with reverse-modulated plasma torches. Within seconds, Riva's team was inside, moving through narrow corridors lined with hexagonal lattice and radiant nerve lights that pulsed to an alien rhythm. Dr. Sofia Vega and Noor Al-Masri moved in tandem behind the breach squad, deploying miniature scan worms that chewed through Tyran data nodes and streamed environmental telemetry directly into Riva's visor. Each corner turned revealed more sterile efficiency, more bone-white corridors designed for thought harvesting, not combat. Meanwhile, Ilara, suspended inside the main data chamber and surrounded by the hum of neuro-mapping conduits, detected the ripple first. Not sound, not motion, but an inconsistency in the Harmony AI, like a skipped breath in a machine that didn't breathe. Then came the override pulse, a sharp, invasive spike riding the same spectral carrier she had embedded weeks ago. It was hers. Earth's STF signal was piggybacking on her sabotage. She opened her eyes to chaos. The chamber lights shifted from blue to amber as defense programs kicked in. Drones swarmed. Ilara, still semi-sedated, ripped the neural leads from her temples and dropped to the floor. Pain split through her skull, but behind it came clarity. She ran, not from fear, but because she had embedded command hierarchies in the routing net. She could still shut down the ship's navigation AI if she reached the primary node before the Tyrans reset the matrix. Riva's team closed the distance fast, slicing through automated defenders and disoriented Tyran sentries. The resistance was intelligent but reactive, designed to suppress panic, not counteract military action. That gave the humans just enough edge to advance. Mei Zhao activated a localized electromagnetic shroud that masked the team's biosigns for 90 seconds, allowing Riva and Noor to breach the central chamber where the abductees were held in stasis. Stasis pods cracked open, gas hissed, and the abducted women, disoriented but alive, staggered into the arms of armed rescuers speaking Earth languages. Ilara wasn't there. Panic almost rose in Riva's voice as she barked for a head count, her eyes scanning each identifier on the extraction manifest. Then Ilara's voice cut through the comms, static-laced but unmistakable. She had accessed the master relay node in the upper matrix deck and was manually overriding the ship's guidance grid. If she failed, the Syndicate would reroute the ship into deep space, turning it into a drifting tomb. Riva bolted with 2 operatives toward Ilara's position, carving through the shifting architecture of a ship already destabilizing from internal AI loops. Ilara fought through dizziness as her fingers traced alien glyphs that now made sense after weeks of studying them in dream state. The override command required biometric confirmation from a Tyran officer, but she had rerouted the signature to match a data ghost of Dralek's projection. It worked. The nav grid collapsed. Guidance AI entered lockdown. The ship began to drift. Moments later, Riva reached Ilara, bloodied, exhausted, but grinning. "Took you long enough," Ilara rasped before collapsing into her arms. The rest was escape protocol. The team extracted the captives, detonated the neuro-extraction cores, and activated the homing beacon for Aegis 1. Overseer Dralek was captured, stunned in the confusion, shackled with dampeners, and dragged into the evac pod in silence. For the first time in recorded Tyran Syndicate history, a human-led force had hijacked one of their vessels. As the Quantara vanished into the event horizon of Earth-controlled space, its systems frozen and stripped, A single transmission pulsed across the galactic net. This species is not passive. This species fights back. The captured Quantara cruised into low Earth orbit under the watch of every sensor, satellite, and wideband interceptor Earth had brought online in the last 60 hours. It didn't matter that its weapons were offline, and its systems gutted. What mattered was that it floated above Earth under human control, the sleek, angular monstrosity of a Tyran Syndicate logistics freighter, now reborn as proof of resistance and retribution. Inside the command bay of the Geneva Unified Command Pavilion, General Helena Ward stood before a global broadcast panel, flanked by international delegates, scientific advisors, and the women who had been taken. Alara Quinn stood beside her, a dermal interface still strapped to her wrist, her presence calm but electric with purpose. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the architect of Earth's counterstrike, the one who cracked the Tyran's illusion of invincibility. Ward's voice rang out, measured and unflinching as she addressed the planet. Earth is not a resource zone. We are not a reservoir for your calculations. We are a civilization. We are a people, and we will not be taken. That transmission wasn't just for humans. It was spliced and rebroadcast on the same interstellar trade channels the Tyran Syndicate used for logistical coordination, piggybacked on the freighter's original callback frequency. It struck the galactic marketplace like a thunderclap. Tyran executives, those cold-blooded oligarchs who treated conquest like acquisition, found their analytics shaken as shares of colonial extraction ventures dropped across 8 sectors. The loss of a ship was a footnote. The loss of a concept, that Earth could resist cognitive acquisition and turn it into a diplomatic weapon, was existential. Overseer Dralek, now stripped of his bureaucratic interface nodes and confined within a sealed negotiation chamber lined with neurodisruptors, sat unblinking as Earth's envoys interrogated him not with threats, but with data. Alara herself led the deconstruction of the Syndicate's acquisition protocols, using everything she had learned inside the Quantara to mirror back the Syndicate's systems with brutal elegance. In tandem, Noor al-Masri and Mei Zhao transmitted a decryption package of Tyran trade law violations to the Galactic Tribunal, proving that the Syndicate had violated Category 5 sentience ethics by using non-consensual neuromapping on pre-registered sovereign individuals. Earth was not just demanding recognition, it was indicting its enemy through their own laws. The Syndicate, rattled by economic disruption and legal exposure, responded in the only way its layered corporate feudalism could: damage control. High-level emissary delegation was dispatched under full security to negotiate terms. At the newly constructed orbital station Vigil 1, Alara Quinn sat across from 3 Syndicate CEOs, cloaked in photonic armor and cold formality. Their initial offers were transactional: reparations, ship tech, data access. Alara rejected them. She didn't want payback, she wanted parity. Sovereign status for Earth, full recognition as a diplomatic entity with protected borders under interstellar commerce law, and a tribunal to oversee and prevent further cognitive extractions on any species. The CEOs balked, then folded when Alara played her last card: a full copy of the Quantara's routing AI, redesigned to infiltrate Syndicate logistics silently. Earth didn't need an army. It had code. Code built by minds they had underestimated. The treaty, forged over 12 hours of silent war by intellect, was ratified in orbit. Earth was now listed not as a resource zone, but as an autonomous peer, dangerous, adaptive, and protected. As part of the accord, Alara was appointed Earth's first chief scientific envoy, her voice now echoing not from the corners of a lab, but across the hallways of interstellar diplomacy. She accepted with a nod to the others who stood with her. Riva, Das, who had broken the Tyran line, Sophia Vega, who never stopped believing they'd be found, Noor, May, Tanith, and every woman who had turned captivity into a signal. The Quantara, retrofitted with Earth's tech and renamed the Phoenix Accord, became Earth's first interstellar embassy vessel, and in its databanks, encrypted under Alara's personal cipher, lay the truth of what had been done and what had been stopped. Across the Tyran domains, procurement programs were frozen. Syndicate oversight models were rebuilt. And for the first time, Earth was flagged in red across interstellar economic networks as a high-risk cognitive civilization. Not because of its weapons, not because of its armies, but because of minds like Ilara's, unbreakable, underestimated, and now untethered. Humanity's first war among the stars had ended not in fire, but in recognition. And above a blue world scarred but awakened, the stars no longer looked distant. They looked negotiable.